Jalen Merritt pushed open the glass door of Summit Kicks, his heart pounding with quiet excitement. The air was thick with the scent of fresh leather and rubber, the walls lined with illuminated shelves stacked with the latest sneaker releases. Today was the day. The day he'd been waiting for, saving for, working toward. His eyes locked on to the Nike Zoom X Pro, sleek and black with deep blue accents. He had watched countless reviews, compared every detail, and now, finally, he was here to buy them. As he walked deeper into the store, he barely noticed the eyes watching him. Meredith Langley, the store manager, had been eyeing him the moment he walked in. She had worked in retail long enough to spot trouble, and to her, Jalen fit the description. Jalen moved casually through the aisles, running his fingers along the pristine sneakers. He crouched down near the display, picking up the shoe he had been dreaming of. The price tag gleamed. $230. It was a lot, but he had earned every dollar cutting grass, running errands, and washing cars. Meredith pretended to fix a display as she moved closer. She had seen the videos. Groups of teens stuffing sneakers into their sweatshirts and running. She wasn't about to let it happen on her watch. "Do you need help with something?" she asked, her voice sharp. Jalen looked up, blinking. There was something in her tone. Not helpful, but accusatory. "I'm good," he said, keeping his voice even. "You sure?" she pressed, her arms crossed. Jalen exhaled. He could feel it now. The suspicion. The weight of her judgment. She wasn't asking because she wanted to help. She was asking because she didn't trust him. Jalen took the sneaker and walked calmly toward the checkout, placing it on the counter. The young cashier, Tasha, smiled politely. "Nice pick. Want to try them on?" Jalen smiled back. "Yeah, that'd be great." Before she could grab his size, Meredith's voice cut through the air. "Hold on." Jalen looked up. Tasha froze. Customers turned their heads. "Empty your pockets," Meredith ordered. A heavy silence filled the store. Jalen's hands, which had been resting on the counter, curled slightly. He took a slow breath. "Excuse me?" Meredith's expression didn't change. "You heard me. Empty your pockets." Jalen felt the heat rise in his chest. Not again, not here. He glanced at the customers around him. No one else was being questioned. No one else was being watched. "You think I stole something?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Meredith didn't even hesitate. "Store policy." Jalen let out a quiet, disbelieving laugh. "Store policy." The cashier looked down, uncomfortable. A man near the racks shuffled his feet. A woman near the window whispered to her friend. The weight of their silence pressed against him. "If you haven't taken anything, it won't be a problem," Meredith said. Jalen clenched his jaw. He knew this game. He had played it before. "I came here to buy shoes," he said slowly. "I worked for them. I saved for them. I brought my own money. And you think I'd throw that away to steal?" Meredith gave a thin-lipped smile, the kind that said she had already decided she was right. "Then prove me wrong." Jalen felt his patience slipping. This was what people like her did. Push you until you reacted, then act like the victim. He refused to give her that satisfaction. Instead, he pulled out his phone, his wallet, and his house key, placing them on the counter. "There." Meredith barely glanced at them. "Turn your pockets inside out." A murmur rippled through the store. Even Tasha's eyes widened. Jalen let out a slow breath. "Are you serious? If you keep arguing, I'll call security." There it was, the threat. Jalen could feel his hands shaking, not with fear, with frustration. He picked up his phone and unlocked it. He tapped a number, raised it to his ear, and waited. Meredith's smirk flickered. "Who are you calling?" Jalen didn't answer. "Mom," he said into the phone, his voice steady. "Can you come inside?" The store fell into complete silence. Outside, heels clicked against the pavement. Then, the soft chime of the glass door. Celeste Merritt stepped inside. She didn't rush. She didn't have to. Dressed in a navy blazer and silk blouse, she commanded the room before she even spoke. Meredith barely spared her a glance at first. She was too busy waiting for Jalen to break, but then Tasha whispered something nervously. "Miss Merritt." Meredith frowned. The name seemed familiar, but she brushed it off. "Can I help you?" she asked, polite but dismissive. Celeste's expression remained unreadable. "I believe you already have." Jalen stepped closer to his mother. "She accused me of stealing," he said plainly. "Told me to empty my pockets. Even when I did, she asked me to turn them inside out." Celeste's expression didn't change, but her eyes darkened slightly. She turned to Meredith. "Is that so?" Meredith squared her shoulders. "We have a responsibility to prevent theft." Celeste tilted her head. "And what exactly made my son suspicious?" Meredith hesitated. He was lingering, checking prices, watching other customers. Jalen let out a quiet laugh. "That's called shopping." A few people murmured in agreement. Celeste kept her gaze locked on Meredith. "Anything else?" Meredith shifted. He had his hands in his pockets. Celeste exhaled. So did the man by the Jordan section. Silence. Celeste let it stretch before speaking again. "You profiled my son, publicly humiliated him, threatened him with security, all because he was looking at shoes." Meredith swallowed hard. The cracks in her confidence were beginning to show, and then Jalen delivered the final blow. "She owns this place." Meredith's face drained of color. Celeste pulled out her business card and placed it on the counter. The realization hit. She had just accused the CEO's son of stealing. Meredith stared at the business card as if it might disappear. The words Celeste Merritt, founder and CEO, Summit Kicks, were printed in crisp, bold letters. The reality of what she had just done settled heavily on her shoulders. I didn't know," she stammered. Celeste remained poised, her expression unreadable. "And if he weren't my son," she asked smoothly, "would that have made your actions acceptable?" Meredith opened her mouth, but no words came. Jalen stood beside his mother, arms crossed. The sting of humiliation was still fresh, but seeing Meredith scramble to find an excuse almost made up for it. Almost. I just," Meredith started, then stopped. There was nothing she could say that wouldn't make her look worse. Tasha, the cashier, shifted uncomfortably behind the counter. Customers continued pretending not to watch, though their silence spoke volumes. After a long pause, Celeste sighed. "We'll discuss this later." Meredith stiffened. "Wait, does this mean—" "It means," Celeste interrupted, "you should take a moment to reflect on why you thought my son was suspicious. Then maybe consider whether you should be managing a store at all." Meredith paled. Jalen bit the inside of his cheek to keep from smiling. As Meredith stood there, struggling to find words, Celeste turned to Jalen. "Do you still want the shoes?" she asked. Jalen hesitated. He had spent so much time looking forward to this moment, imagining how good it would feel to finally wear them. Now they felt tainted by the experience. But then he met his mother's gaze. Steady, unwavering. He nodded. "Yeah." Tasha cleared her throat. "I'll ring you up," she said softly. She scanned the sneakers quickly, glancing at Jalen with something like an apology in her eyes. He didn't blame her. She wasn't the problem. When the transaction was done, Celeste placed a hand on Jalen's shoulder and led him toward the door. Just before they left, she turned back to Meredith. "Change starts when we recognize our own bias," she said. "I suggest you start there." Then, without another word, they walked out. The ride home was quiet at first. Jalen stared at the shoebox in his lap, running a finger along its edge. "Mom?" "Yes?" He hesitated. "Did you plan that?" Celeste glanced at him, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "I didn't know it would happen," she admitted. "But I know how people like Meredith think. It was only a matter of time." Jalen exhaled. "I hate that." "I do too." A beat of silence. Then she added, But we can use it. Jalen frowned. Use it how? Celeste's smile deepened. By making sure the next kid who walks into that store doesn't get treated the way you were. Jalen thought about that. The idea of turning his frustration into something meaningful made his chest feel a little lighter. Maybe, just maybe, this was bigger than him. That night, Jalen couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened, the embarrassment, the anger, the way his mother had turned the situation on its head with just a few words. He pulled out his phone and typed, "How to report discrimination in retail stores." The next morning, he walked into the kitchen where his mom was sipping coffee. "I want to do something about it," he said. Celeste raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "The way Meredith treated me, the way she probably treats other people, too." Celeste studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good, because I already sent an email to the board." Jalen grinned. "Of course you did." She smirked over the rim of her mug. "I have a reputation to maintain." Jalen chuckled, shaking his head. He still didn't know exactly what change would look like, but for the first time since yesterday, he felt like he had control again. That was enough. For now. A week later, Jalen received a text from an unknown number. "Hey, this is Tasha from Summit Kicks. Just thought you should know. Meredith's been transferred. New manager starts next week. Hope you're doing okay." Jalen stared at the screen. Then a slow smile spread across his face. His mom had been right. Change was possible. He grabbed his shoes, laced them up, and took a deep breath. This was just the beginning.